Daniel Sports Central will be giving you guys my Week 10 college football bowl projections for the 2022 season. The initial college football playoff rankings have been released, and we're headed right into the best part of the college football season. We are headed into November, the final month of the regular season. And so today I'll be giving you guys my first edition of bowl projections for November. Let's get into it with our group of 5 bowl games. We got the Bahamas Bowl, which is going to be Western Kentucky and Kent State. Cure Bowl is going to be Texas Tech and Georgia Southern. And that's where our first Power 5 team is. Texas Tech, I got projected for 6 wins right now. And I've seen Iowa State in this position as well. I actually do not have Iowa State making a bowl game. I've got them projected for 5 wins. I just think, with the team that's only got 3 wins right now, I just don't know if they can pull out 3 more wins in Iowa State. So I'm going to go with Texas Tech in the Cure Bowl taking on Georgia Southern. Fenway Bowl, we got Louisville and Memphis. Louisville's a team that should get up to bowl eligibility this weekend as they take on James Madison. Even though James Madison is a fairly good team this season, but I do think Louisville wins that and they get up to 6 wins, and they'll be in the Fenway Bowl taking on Memphis. New Mexico Bowl, we got Air Force and North Texas. LA Bowl, we got Boise State and Washington State. Washington State is the team I got projected for 7 wins out of the Pac-12. The Cougars are a team that I'm pretty confident they get up to 7. They're actually a fairly decent football team, kind of in the background of the Pac-12 this season. Then you got the Lending-Tree Bowl between Middle Tennessee and Southern Miss. Las Vegas Bowl, Oregon State and Florida. This would be a very intriguing matchup. You got Florida, who I got projected for 6 wins, barely getting to a bowl game, taking on Oregon State, who I've got projected for 8. This would be a great matchup. Oregon State, who's been pretty good the past couple of seasons, taking on a Florida team that's been kind of down this year. I think that'd be a good one there if it were to happen. Frisco Bowl, we got Fresno State and South Alabama. Myrtle Beach Bowl, we got App State and Ball State. Idaho Potato Bowl, Eastern Michigan and Wyoming. Boca Raton Bowl, Houston and Ohio. And the New Orleans Bowl, UTSA and Coastal Carolina. Moving on, Armed Forces Bowl, we got SMU and BYU. And BYU, I do have getting to a bowl game. They're currently 4-5. They got to win 2 of their last 3. And I think that they do that. They either beat Boise State or Stanford on the road, and then they beat Utah Tech to get up to 6 wins. And this is a team that started out the season really strong. I had them ranked in the top 10 at one point, but it turns out BYU has just disappointed a bit down the stretch, but I do still have them getting to a bowl game taking on SMU. Independence Bowl, we got East Carolina and Army. Gasparilla Bowl, we got Tulane flexing in for an ACC or an SEC team taking on Buffalo. Hawaii Bowl, we got San Diego State and Rice. Quick Lane Bowl, we got Iowa and Miami, Ohio. I do have the Hawkeyes getting up to 6 wins out of the Big Ten. And the Big Ten, I did drop a couple teams. I think I had 11 Big Ten teams projected to make bowl games last week. I've only got 9 this week. So I do have Iowa getting to 1, but I did drop out a couple of teams, those being Michigan State and Nebraska. And then we got Camellia Bowl between Liberty and Missouri. I got Missouri flexing in to this position to take on Liberty, who's been having a great season so far. Missouri, I got projected for 6 wins. They've been playing pretty well in recent weeks, so we'll see how Missouri does as they take on Kentucky this weekend. If they win that game, they're in a pretty good position to get up to 6 wins. First responder, but we got Baylor and UNLV. I got Baylor in this position, currently projected for 6 wins out of the Big 12, taking on UNLV. Birmingham Bowl, we got Texas A&M and Troy. Texas A&M is taking on Florida this weekend, and this is almost a must-win for the Aggies if they want any chance to get to a bowl game, which is crazy because Texas A&M in the beginning parts of the season was ranked extremely high, and they were considered a potential dark horse contender, national contender, and it just has been a disappointing season for the Aggies. But I've got them still getting to a bowl game, taking on Troy there. Guaranteed Rate Bowl, we got Kansas and Wisconsin. I got Wisconsin getting up to 6 wins, taking on Kansas. Well, I've got getting up to 7, even though I'm kind of leaning towards potentially projecting them for 6, just because Kansas does play a pretty tough slate of games in November. Military Bowl, we got Duke and UCF. I got Duke projected for 6 out of the ACC. And then Liberty Bowl, we got Oklahoma and Arkansas. I think Oklahoma's potentially a team that could get up to 8 wins. That's where I've got them right now. I think Oklahoma finishes out the season strong, and they get to a decent bowl game in the Liberty Bowl to take on Arkansas, who I got projected for 7 out of the SEC. And then we got the Holiday Bowl between Pitt and Utah. Pitt I've got projected for 7, and Utah for 9. So Utah might be a favorite if that matchup were to happen, or they probably would be for that matter. But I mean, you got a strong top 4 in the Pac-12 there, and I've got Utah as the 4th between Oregon, USC, UCLA, and of course Utah, just because they obviously they lost UCLA, and it's going to be tough for that team at this point to have a chance to win the Pac-12 unless a lot of chaos ensued over the next few weeks. Moving on, we got the Texas Bowl between Oklahoma State and Kentucky. Oklahoma State looked just terrible against Kansas State this past week, and so I got the Cowboys moving down to the Texas Bowl. I've had Oklahoma State in a New Year's Six Bowl the past few weeks as the Big 12 champion, but that is different this week. I've got them taking on Kentucky. That'd still be a great matchup if that were to happen, as I've got Kentucky projected for 8 wins and Oklahoma State currently projected for 9. Pinstripe Bowl, we got Miami and Minnesota. Minnesota, I've got getting up to 8 wins actually, so I do have the Golden Gophers finishing out pretty strong to take on Miami, who I got projected for 6. I mean, the Hurricanes, it's going to be tough for them to get up to 6, but I do think that they do in the end. And then Cheesable, we got Syracuse and Texas. Syracuse is a team that, they haven't looked too good the past couple of weeks, but I do still have them getting up to 8 wins to take on a Texas team who I also projected for 8. And then the Alamo Bowl, we got TCU and UCLA. So, I don't have Oklahoma State or TCU in a New Year's Six Bowl game. It's going to be a different team. We'll get into that in a second here. But TCU I've got in the Alamo Bowl to take on UCLA, who is a team I got projected for 10. That'd be a great matchup there, that's for sure. And TCU I still could see potentially getting into the New Year's Six if this scenario were to happen, and we'll get into that also in just a little bit. Duke's Mayo Bowl, we got Purdue and Wake Forest, 2 teams I got projected for 8 wins, and this would be a good matchup. I got Purdue now projected as 2nd in the Big Ten West behind Illinois, who just continues to prove that they're the best team and the most complete team in the Big Ten. And this would be a great matchup for Purdue taking on Wake Forest, who I do have taking a loss or 2 down the stretch, but still, you got 2 good teams facing off there. Sun Bowl, we got Florida State and Washington. I got the Huskies finishing out pretty strong, getting up to 9 wins, taking on Florida State, who I got projected for 7. Gator Bowl, we got Notre Dame and South Carolina. I've had Notre Dame in this position for several weeks, but I think it still stands. And this would be a great matchup for them as they take on, or if they were to take on South Carolina, who I've got projected for 7. Arizona Bowl, we got San Jose State and Toledo. Then the Music City Bowl, we got Maryland and Mississippi State. I've got Maryland finishing out at 8 wins in the Big Ten, and that would be, I think, actually a pretty intriguing matchup if they were to take on Mississippi State, who has had a roller coaster of a season, that's for sure. I've got them projected to finish out at 7. Moving on to some of your bigger bowl games now, we got the Citrus Bowl between LSU and Penn State. LSU got projected to finishing out at 9 wins, and they got a chance to knock off Alabama this weekend. They got it at home in Baton Rouge. That's a huge opportunity for the Tigers, but I do have them losing that game in the end, and they'll finish out at 9 wins and potentially as a top 4 team in the SEC. And I've got them taking on Penn State, who I got projected for 10 wins to finish out at 10 wins, but I do have them not making the New Year's Six versus previous projections because I got a different team in the Big Ten getting there instead. Moving on, we got the ReliaQuest Bowl between NC State and Ole Miss. And NC State is a team that I've got pretty much in a 3-way tie with Wake Forest and Syracuse at the top of the ACC, but I do have NC State in the end getting to this bowl game to take on Ole Miss, who I've got projected for 9 wins out of the SEC. Moving on to the Orange Bowl, we got North Carolina, who I've got as the ACC runner-up with 10 wins, taking on Illinois, who I got projected as the Big Ten runner-up pretty much, if you consider the Big Ten West champion or whoever loses the Big Ten championship as the runner-up. And the Fighting Illini, they have played excellent football the past few weeks, and I've got them finishing out with a 10-2 regular season. They'll lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, and this will end up giving Illinois a spot in a New Year's Six bowl game, which would be an outstanding opportunity for them. That team has been, Brett Bielema has done an outstanding job with that team, turning them around. And that's a team that had very low expectations going into this season. Sugar Bowl, we got Georgia and Kansas State. This may be the one that will surprise you guys the most. Georgia, I got projected for an 11-1 regular season. I've got Tennessee winning the SEC East I do have Tennessee beating Georgia this weekend. That's kind of, you could say, a shot in the dark to project Tennessee to beat Georgia. But even I feel like the Vols are very much capable of beating Georgia this weekend, despite it being in Athens. And so I got Georgia in the Sugar Bowl right now. And we'll get into more about the college football playoff scenario in just a little bit. But I do have Georgia as pretty much the best team outside of the college football playoff, taking on Kansas State. Well, I've got projected to win the Big 12, yes, over TCU and Oklahoma State. The way Kansas State's been playing, I mean, with a backup quarterback, the way that they just handled Oklahoma State, I'm pretty confident K-State can play a solid November and end up being as an 11-win team heading into the postseason. Yeah, this would be definitely an unexpected matchup, but definitely a good one. The Rose Bowl, we got Michigan and Oregon. I got Oregon projected to win the Pac-12, and then Michigan at 11 wins out of the Big 10. I've got them still losing to Ohio State in a few weeks to finish out the regular season, which will bump them out of contention for the Big 10, but they still get to the Rose Bowl in the end because Ohio State makes the college football playoff. And Oregon and USC, I got facing off in the Pac-12 title game. I've got Oregon winning that game in the end, which would bring them into the Rose Bowl. And not quite in the college football playoff, even though, I mean, winning the Pac-12 would probably place Oregon in the top 6 somewhere. Cotton Bowl, we got USC and Cincinnati. I got the Trojans as the Pac-12 runner-up to take on Cincinnati, who I got as the best Group of 5 team. And honestly, the Group of 5 and any teams outside of the Power 5 just haven't been there just haven't been any standouts this season, which is different than in recent years. I mean, of course, last year Cincinnati was the big name team to get into the college football playoff, or you could say maybe a surprise team, as we had never seen a Group of 5 team in the playoff before. But I still think Cincinnati finishes out strong, even though UCF, they could potentially be in this position as well. But nonetheless, I've got that team taking on USC in the Cotton Bowl. Moving on to your college football playoff semifinal games, we got Alabama and Clemson in the Peach Bowl. This would be a rematch, obviously, of many matchups in the past and in recent history in the college football playoff, and I've got it happening once again. And there could be a bit of controversy here. I got Clemson finishing out as undefeated and as the ACC champion, but potentially we could see Georgia. I mean, I've got the scenario where there's Tennessee beating Georgia this weekend, and then eventually Alabama beating Tennessee in the SEC championship, which, if that scenario were to happen and all teams won out their games otherwise, we could definitely see 3 SEC teams in the college football playoff, and we could see Georgia slide into this number 4 position to take on Alabama. It'd still be a great matchup. It's just a matter of what the committee decides, whether to put in an undefeated Clemson team or a one-loss Georgia team that many would say is more talented than Clemson. And then the 2 versus 3 matchup, we got Ohio State and Tennessee. Tennessee as the SEC runner-up to take on Ohio State, the undefeated Big 10 champion. And this would be an insane game. 2 of the best offenses in the country going head-to-head. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on these bowl projections, and stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll catch you on the next one.